Blog Talk Radio.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Red Light Sports Ramble. I am Troy Otradovic, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Evan Watallison. Tonight, Evan, we are previewing one of the biggest comebacks in Green Bay Packer history as they came back Sunday to defeat the Cowboys. So everybody sit back, listen to Evan and I ramble. With that said, Evan, I'm going to turn it over to you and let the fans know exactly what happened yesterday.
Deja vu. So, last week we talked about Jekyll and Hyde between halves. This week, more of the same. In a good way, obviously, is like Jekyll and Hyde performance by the Packers. As we saw, they're down 26-3 at halftime, and I'm sitting there in my comfortable chair at home watching the game, and I'm like, and I even tweeted out, what's it going to hurt to throw Scott Tolzien in the game? Not going to hurt nothing. It can't get much worse. And the Packers come out, first play from scrimmage, second half, Eddie Lacy bust 160 yards, and Packers come back and down 23 and win the game, final 37-36. And it was just, one of the most exciting games I've ever watched. I love seeing the fight that the Packers had, even being in that big deficit. And granted, the Cowboys helped us out a lot. But as I said, last week, and I'll say it again, the quote, guy I work with at the radio station, Chuck Freeman, you never apologize for a win. So that's, I guess, most detail I'm going to go and quick for the recap. So such a great game to watch.
Yeah, I mean, if we went through every scoring play, that would take up our 30 minutes. So I'm glad that we decided just to hit the main points, because there are a lot of subtopics to go over on this. And I was reading Twitter today, Evan, a little bit, and I know we had to push back the time. I apologize to our listeners who wanted to listen live at 5 Eastern, had some work issues. But all I'm hearing, Evan, is the Cowboys' demise, the Cowboys this, the Cowboys that. At some point, don't you think we should give the Packers a little bit of credit, Evan?
We should.
I mean, just a little bit.
Matt Flynn, 138.5 passer rating in the fourth quarter. Matt Flynn did that, not the Cowboys screwing up, so Packers deserve some credit.
Yeah, and all I hear about is Tony Romo this, Tony Romo that. It's Tony Romo. I really don't care. He didn't lose that game, in my opinion. Let's give some credit to the Green Bay Packers. Because I'll tell you what, Evan, like you, I was in the man cave watching the game. And yes, I didn't do it because you told me not to waste the adult beverages, but it almost went across the room a few times. But at halftime, I just sat there, shook my head, and said, one score at a time, and I was thankful that our defense stopped them on third down in the first half, because they ended up having to kick 4 field goals. And what is the old saying?
Yeah, that was huge.
The old saying is you can't win games kicking field goals. And so I was trying to find a glimmer of hope somewhere in this 23-point deficit. That game, Evan, at halftime could have easily been 35 or 42-3. But our defense stopped them on third down. And if I remember correctly, when we previewed last Thursday, we talked about being able to win third down. They didn't convert a third down until that touchdown pass to Dez Bryant. Now, they did convert one on a penalty earlier on that drive when the line judge, who I thought was blind yesterday, that ruled.
Don't get me started on that.
Well, I'm going to, because that touchdown they scored to take that lead, that free rocked. That should have been a false start. Shouldn't have been offsides. That would have put him in another 3rd and long.
Yep.
And we would have stopped him there and got the ball back on a punt. And then on the 2-point conversion, he had corals. He literally pulled the jersey. You could see it on the replay. And then the interception, clearly he had that ball. I mean, it was overturned, don't get me wrong. But I was so upset with that line judge that I'm like, how are you even out there right now? But anyway, off that point, going back to the third down, because they had stopped them and limit them to field goals, I had a glimmer of hope that if we could keep doing that and maybe do a little bit, that we could edge our way in and maybe tie that up. I didn't think at halftime that we were going to get the points because we were doing nothing offensively. I actually wasn't too upset with the defense. They were bending. They broke a couple times, but they had some huge third down stops. But when we look at that, let's move to the second half, Evan. What do you think happened for the Packers to be able to mount this great comeback in the second half? I know you and I talked in pre-chat, so I'm going to let you take over.
Well, first thing from what I have heard coming from Rob Demonsky and other Packer writers is Johnny Jolly, who didn't return in the game after an injury, and Jermary Lattimore, they stepped up in the locker room, and I don't know what was said, but I heard it was very Charles Woodson-esque. We all remember hearing what Woodson said at the Super Bowl in 2010 when he broke his collarbone. We heard about the speech he gave, and from what I had read, it was very Charles Woodson-esque, and that really fired the team up. And I think just the 60-yard run to open up the second half that Lacey had, I think that swung the momentum the Packers' way. The Packers didn't abandon the run. They stuck to their game plan. They simplified the game plan for Matt Flynn. I think that was huge. Corliss, Boykin, Nelson, they all stepped up, and as well as Eddie Lacy, and the offense wasn't going to give up. They could have easily gave up after that. I think the first half they only had they had under 100 yards of total offense in the first half, I believe. They had 75. They could have easily gave up, but they kept fighting, and then I've said it a few times. The defense is they're front runners, and granted, they were down in the scoreboard, but the defense, seeing the way the offense is clicking, they stepped it up too. So Matt Flynn being very efficient with the football, he ended the day 26 to 39 for 299 yards and 4 touchdowns and 1 interception. All 4 touchdowns came in the second half. Most of the 299 came in the second half, and Eddie Lacy ended the day with 141 yards, and he's the second Packer rookie to break the 1,000-yard mark. But just not giving up and kept to the game plan, kept running Lacy, and that was it right there. That fired up the defense.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I think, and we'll go to this. I think the big momentum change in this game is after the Packers cut the lead to 29-17. They had just scored. They had the Cowboys, and this is the topic of discussion, and we don't have to get into it. They threw it 3 times, and then there was a sack of Romo inside the 5-yard line. The Cowboys had to punt to the Packers. Micah Hyde had a tremendous return to the Cowboys 22, and the Packers scored again to cut it to 5. I think that when that defense made that stop right there, that showed me that the momentum had swung and we had a real chance now to win this game. You and I have always talked about this defense having to come up with a big play. Well, I know we had the interceptions, and you can talk about those right after this. You and I were talking in the pre-chat about the Shields play. And yes, those 2 interceptions and even the one that was called back are big plays defensively. But I think that sack
should not have been called back, personally.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why they did. I'm not gonna argue too much and get real upset about that. I mean, if you're really looking at it, I guess the ball did move that centimeter. But when I look at the big play the Packers made, there's actually 2 pressures. And you know me, Devin, I love talking about the pressure on the quarterback. I think that is the key to a good defense. I think that sack that knocked Romo inside the 5-yard line to make them punt from their goal line was a huge defensive play to give us great field position to gain the momentum. And then from there, we went on to score again. That's when Flynn had that great little shovel pass or little screen pass to Starks, which I thought was a perfect call there. That was awesome. And then the Cowboys got the ball back, and I'm gonna let you talk about that now. Now we've taken, we've got back into the game, and the Cowboys have it. And that interception we talked about, you and I were talking about the play calling and so on and so forth. But talk about that interception that Shields had, how important that turnover was, not just for the Packers, but had he not made that play, something else would have happened, Evan.
Yeah, the interception to Shields. And first to go back on the play calling is, I think the Cowboys offensive coordinator is Bill Callahan. Used to be head coach at Nebraska, head coach for Oakland, has some Wisconsin ties to him. I want to know what the hell he was thinking in that second half, first of all. Romo ends the game with 48 passing attempts, and you have a 26-3 lead at halftime. That is just ridiculous there. And then that particular drive, why did they, throw the ball like they did? Especially, they just had, I believe, a 5 or 6 yard carry right up the middle. You had second and short, and I think it even might have been third and short on that interception. And they, throw the ball to trying to hit Miles Austin, and Shields had a heck of a play on that. He was trailing the play. Austin had him beat, and Shields was able to recover, jump in front of that, intercept it. And if Shields doesn't intercept that, Miles Austin goes the distance to the end zone. But when you're averaging, Murray ended the day averaging 7.4 yards per carry. When you're averaging 7.4 yards per carry, you go for the safer run on third and short and try to get the first down that way and keep that clock moving rather than attempting a throw there, which, yes, Shields made a heck of a play, but, why even contemplating throwing there?
So let's get, let's touch on that topic, because it is the topic of conversation across the country today. What happened to the run game? So I'm going to go to the Jason Garrett comment at the end that Tony Romo audibled out at the end of the game to throw the interception. And I had posed this question to you, and let's scratch our heads. Did Tony Romo audible out of every run call then in the second half, Evan? Do you really believe he did that? I put you on the spot there. I know I did.
But I don't think he did it all. I don't think he did it all.
No, it goes back.
I think.
Go ahead.
And if that's the case, then take that away from him. Tell him you are not audibling anymore. You are calling the plays we are sending in, and that is it. At some point, you've got to stand up to your quarterback and take that responsibility away from him. And if he didn't, that just kind of shows you the type of head coach that Jason Garrett is. He has no backbone.
Yeah. Well, again, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but when I heard the press conference, I'm like, fine, throw him under the bus. And you know how I feel about that audible on the last. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But my next question in that interview, had I had a chance to be in the media room, would have been just that. So if he audibled out of the last running play, did he audible out of every running play in the second half? Because you're absolutely right, Evan. DeMarco Murray was tearing us apart. You and I could have ran through some of those holes. You and I could have gained 5 or 6 yards. And nothing against you. I know you're trying to get in shape. You're losing a lot of weight. I'm a former athlete. We're okay. We could run. But I'll tell you what, the way they were running the ball, you and I could have ran behind that offensive line and gained some yards yesterday. And they totally got away from it. I thought at halftime Murray was going to put up a 200 on us. The way that he was running the ball, I was afraid that he was going to put 200 yards up on us and rush for like 4 touchdowns. Because they were physically dominating the line of scrimmage and giving him holes. And I can't even complain about arm tackling because they just blocked it up. And it goes back to what you were saying in that first half. We couldn't shed a block. We couldn't shed a block. They were blocking us up, and Murray had daylight. And you got away from it. And, again, I'm not placing the blame on Tony Romo here. There had to be some terrible play calling going on because I don't think he audibled into that many pass plays. And like you said, if he did, then you have to step up. I was a coach, and you
I just found a quote here from Jason Garrett. Once you get done with that thought, I have a quote from Jason Garrett I want to read you too.
Great. So my point is, as a coach, like you were saying, you're the coach. It doesn't matter if it's a $100 million player or a $100,000 player. If he's not doing what you want done, then you talk to him sternly, and if he doesn't do it, you pull him out of the game. And yet, there, I said it. If Romo's going to audible to passes when you want to run, then why don't you pull him out of the game and put in a guy that's going to hand the ball off? I mean, that's what I would be upset about if I was a Cowboys fan. Somebody needs to take accountability for what happened, because you're absolutely right. With a 23-point lead, you need to milk the clock. It's not like Murray was averaging 2 yards a carry and you were going to go 3 and out running the ball. He was getting a first down after 2 carries. So go ahead with your quote, Bud.
He was averaging a first down in the first half.
Yeah,
I think he was averaging 10 yards a carry in the first half.
Yeah, it was like 10.3 or something like that.
Here's a quote from, well, I have the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel opened up here. I didn't get time to do a ton of research today because my students were being extra cranky, so I was doing it pre-show. And I found this quote in here, and it's, quote, "I think what we wanted to do was move the football and make them use their timeouts," Garrett said. "Use high percentage throws if we were going to throw it, and similarly, we wanted to be able to run the football." Well, you say you wanted to be able to run the football. Why did you only run the football, about 8 times in the second half?
Yeah, about that.
26-3 lead.
Yeah, it was about 8 times.
That just cracked me up, and we wanted to be able to run the football. You're averaging about 10 yards a carry in the first half. Every 2 carries, you had a first down. Why get away from it?
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, it's the biggest question. And again, like you said, though, we're not going to apologize for a victory. And I'll tell you what, the one thing today, Evan, that I'm so sick and tired of hearing, of course, I'm in Pittsburgh. So now the Steelers and Packers play next week. And all I heard today at work is, "Oh, your Packers got lucky. Your Packers got lucky. Your Packers got lucky." You know what? If you want to call it luck, go ahead and call it luck. I call it they didn't give up. They stuck to their game plan, and the Cowboys got out of what they wanted to do. Whether or not it was forced, but somewhere along the lines, I don't think it was luck. The Packers kept playing, and the Cowboys didn't know how to call the game in the second half. And you know what, honestly, Evan, I'll put that blame on the coaching. Because like I said, if you want a scapegoat in Tony Romo, then go ahead and blame him. But the one comment by sticking, and you just read a quote. So you didn't run the ball. And if you were going to run the ball, you and I just talked about it, then you need to make sure it's happening. I mean, even your running back came off the field, ripped his helmet off, and you could read his lips. Run the damn ball. I mean, something's going on there, and somebody's got to be accountable on that sideline. Yeah. But like I said, with all that said, Evan, I'm giving credit to the Packers. They just never gave up. The Packers didn't get away from the run game. The Packers were down in the game, Evan, and they kept running Lacey. And he was getting some nice chunks of yards and moving the sticks. The second thing I have here, and I want to get...
one play...
Oh, go ahead.
No, you finish.
I was going to say the other thing, and we can get off topic just a little bit with where you were going to go, but the other thing in the second half I noticed is Kiffin got away from the blitz, and he let Flynn be comfortable stepping up in the pocket to hit that seam route to Corals. Didn't you and I talk about that last Thursday? The way to beat them was to hit Corals and get him involved, and Corals had 2 big third down receptions to move the chains. And I saw no pressure in the second half from Kiffin. The first half, it is exactly what you and I talked about Thursday. What if Kiffin decides to bring the safeties up, take away the intermediate stuff, and put pressure on them? What did you and I say? You actually told me, I remember this, it's going to be a long day. And what did they do in the first half? They made it a long day, and then they got away from it. They just stopped blitzing.
That's too weird.
It's almost like, what did you get abducted at halftime by the aliens and put a whole different coaching staff in there? because I can't remember.
Been that way.
I can't remember in the second half a blitz. And if they did, the Packers picked it up. But Flynn actually was stepping up in the pocket and hitting that seam route to Corals. And he ended the game, I believe, with, I have the stats right here. He ended the game 6 catches, 66 yards. That's a modest day for a tight end, a good day. Those are good numbers.
Yeah. Hey, you want to know what's funny?
Yeah, go ahead.
I guarantee you, go look up his stats against Atlanta, and look up his stats against Atlanta.
Okay,
you're going to see the exact same stat line. 6 catches, 66 yards, and a touchdown.
Nice. And that's about what we need out of him. Because he moved the chains too. That's what we want our tight end to do. And I'm really starting to like Corals. I think we talked about it last week. I think he is really maturing into that position. And I think him and Flynn got real comfortable.
It took him a while to come back from that knee injury.
Well, and I'm happy because I know the Cowboys are thin at linebacker, but they couldn't cover him yesterday. They could not cover Corals yesterday, and it was great. But in the first half, the reason he couldn't get involved is because Kiffin was putting pressure on Flynn. And there was no pressure in the second half at all, which, to us was great.
David Bakhtiari deserves a ton of credit. DeMarcus Ware, 1 tackle and 0 sacks yesterday.
Yeah,
that was huge. And Bakhtiari started out, Barclay started out very rough, very slow, as he's done a few times this year. And by the second half, he was one of the best blockers out there on the field, as the whole unit was. I don't think Flynn was sacked once the entire second half.
He wasn't. I mean, we had 5 drives, 5 touchdowns to start that second half. The only drive we didn't have a touchdown on was the last one when we had a kneel on the ball. And so I do love
those kneel downs.
I love the kneel down. I give that whole Packer team credit. Like I said, I'm tired of people saying we got lucky. And I understand the talk across the country is the Cowboys meltdown. But you know what? At some point, you got to give the Packers credit for hanging in there. Any team could have just folded it up at halftime. So, if anything comes from our ramble tonight, Evan, I want our ramble to actually be the one that gives the Packers credit for coming back and playing the game. We can talk about the Cowboys' collapse, but the Packers still had to capitalize on it. They still had to go down and score those points, didn't they?
They did.
So, I think the Packers deserve some credit here. And, I think, as we go back, the last thing we may want to end on is, all those people that are the Tony Romo haters out there. You and I talked about this, and whether or not he audibled out a bit, I just want to throw this in because I think it's kind of neat. That last play, we were talking about, they needed, 1 yard when he threw the interception. And even if he did audible, you and I agree that was the right call. I mean, that was a good call. Williams was playing off of him, 7 yards at the time? And you and I also at that time were questioning, why would you run it there anyway? So what do you think about that last play? Let's say he did audible. Do you think it was the right audible to run that route? Now, granted, it wasn't executed properly, but let's just talk about the play call at the line, the audible being called. Do you think it was okay to call that audible?
No, I was fine with him calling the audible if that was the case, but what I don't understand is why are you throwing it to that Beasley he threw it to? Why are you throwing it to Beasley when you have Des Bryant, Jason Williams, Miles Austin, with the Terrence Williams, DeMarco Murray, when you have all those guys you can throw it to? Why are you throwing it to Beasley? And also, why is Tremont Williams on Beasley? Which I'm not going to get into because I'm just going to, savor the victory and the Packers not giving up. But that's just my thoughts on it. I have no problem. I think the audible was the right call, but as you said, why that route and why throwing it there?
Yeah, I mean, we can question that all we want. I just wanted to go into it. It's one of those things that and go back to that Shields interception. you and I talked about how do we win this game, and it was, if you remember, I said there will be nothing better for me to see Clay Matthews bearing down on Tony Romo and not necessarily sacking him, but getting him out of the pocket to make a mistake. And what happened? That's exactly what happened on that play. Clay Matthews was all over him. And to be honest, Evan, I'm thankful he didn't get the sack. I mean, since it turned out to be an interception. The interception helped us. But that
the one play Clay Matthews made the entire game was a miss. There was two plays that I saw him make the entire game. Other than that, he was non-existent. There was that sack by Dayton Jones.
Yeah.
Where Clay Matthews flushed him out of the pocket, just as you're talking about. And on that one, just the second play he made all game, and it was probably the biggest play of the game, was a missed tackle.
And how often are we going to say, hey, Clay Matthews, glad you missed that tackle? But, that's what happens.
Not very often.
Not very often, but it goes back to what we were saying. That was the kind of pressure I'm talking about. Get him out of the pocket. Force him to make a quick decision without being able to set his feet and let him sling the ball. Because he is Favre-esque. He's another one of those gunslingers that is going to make mistakes. I know I was on the website today that we contribute to, Your Daily Cowboys Football Fix. Somebody had commented on our previous show that be careful what you ask for. Tony Romo is a good out-of-pocket passer. He is, if he doesn't have pressure on him.
He makes poor decisions.
If he has pressure on him, he makes poor decisions. When he's out of the pocket with no pressure, yeah, he's a very good out-of-the-pocket passer. When he's flushed out and gets away from the pressure, I'm not going to argue he's very good to his right. But when he's being pressured out of the pocket, he makes mistakes. And that's any quarterback, though. That's the pressure that the Packers need to apply next week to Big Ben. And you and I will get into that on Thursday. But we're right about 3 minutes. Yeah. 3 minutes, Bud. How do you want to wrap it up? Anything else you want to add about the game? I think we've exhausted our 30 minutes. I think it was another great ramble, but what else do you have to add for today?
Well, I just want to add big props to Jared Boykin, continuing to step up, 6 catches for 83 yards. Jordy Nelson, you just can't say enough good things about Jordy. He just always comes to play. And then everyone's favorite whipping boy this season, Tremont Williams, quietly had, in my opinion, quite a good game. Des Bryant had his catches, combination between him and Shields. Bryant had his catches, but Bryant's one of the top receivers in the NFL. But overall game, Williams ended the day with 9 tackles, and he seemed to be all over the field, making plays and, start, looking like that leader out there on the defense. So that's just the last comments I want to make on the game. It's, those three I really got to call out is Boykin, Nelson, and Williams to go along with your Lacey, Corliss, and Flynn. So that's all I got for the game. But just, thank, all of our listeners, thank you. Check out your daily CowboysFootballFix.com. A lot of great stuff on there. And it's really all I got. Listen to us tomorrow as we do Twitter Talk.
Yeah, and, just to give the listeners a little preview, we're going to have Kevin Cunningham.
90 seconds.
Kevin Cunningham back on the show Wednesday, Evan, because UW-Whitewater went down to Texas and they won. They held off, and they're now going to play Mount Union in the Division III National Championship game in Salem, Virginia. I'm actually trying to rearrange my work schedule to try and get down there for that game. It's not too far from me, but we're definitely going to have Kevin Cunningham on the show Wednesday. So we are going to move Twitter Talk to tomorrow. Evan and I will definitely tweet out, hey, send your topics in. You can get at us on Facebook. On Twitter, it's at eDubs1250intern or at Red Light Ramble. Our Facebook is Red Light Ramble. Go ahead, give us your topics for tomorrow, and we will definitely try to get to everyone that gives us something to talk about. With that said, everyone, we'll see you at the next red light. Enjoy your evening. If you're in the Midwest or the Northeast, stay warm, but we'll get at you tomorrow. Have a good one, everyone.